My speech is over African Americans and reparations. Since the start of American history, African Americans have not been treated equally by other races. There were hundreds of years of slavery, and in these hundreds of years, African Americans were not allowed to learn how to read and write because they were thought that as a collective, if they were educated, they would be stronger and considered free and equal like other races. This caused them to not receive equal opportunities as other people, causing African Americans to find themselves in a spot where educational and financial opportunities were far different than other people. Reparations is a way to fix that problem and provide somewhat of equality that America is all about. It is a payment to those affected by those years of slavery. There is much debate on the topic, ranging from the fact that other races besides African Americans have been mistreated and are in need of reparations, to the fact that African Americans are only in America because they were brought here unwillingly and not allowed to leave. My first point comes from Rashawn Ray, a sociologist in government studies. He says that in 1860, over $3 billion was the value assigned to the physical bodies of enslaved people. It uses free labor and production. This was more money that was invested in factories and railroads combined. In 1861, the value placed on cotton produced by enslaved blacks was $250 million. African Americans worked as unpaid laborers and greatly impacted the United States economy. This was all done for free. My second point was the fact that I interviewed an African American in the community to see how a person of color views reparations. After asking him what he thought about reparations, he turned to me and said, "No amount of money can fix what's been done. It's simply too late. You cannot put a financial amount of money to the problem. It simply won't fix it." He said, "For starters, most people who receive reparations in the form of a direct physical payment of money will not know how to react to all of a sudden going from poverty to money and having a lot of money." He said that most people have lived in poverty their whole life and have no understanding of money management. They were simply not taught it. And because this is all because poverty is all they've ever known. He said that they've known poverty. Their dads and mothers have known poverty. Grandparents have known poverty. He said also that other ethnicities need to be paid as well. For instance, Asians and also Native Americans should receive some sort of reparations, not in a form of money, but in the form of the money going directly into communities to help the communities flourish. After asking someone of color, I decided to ask someone who was not of color. They responded simply with, "I do not have an opinion on that kind of topic. I don't know much about it." The person said that in school they weren't really taught that kind of stuff, and if they knew more about the topic, they would actually have to make an opinion on the matter. But since they've never been taught, they don't really know. After doing research on who would pay for reparations, the idea became clear that nobody really knows how to go about it. Reparations remain a political long shot. Still, a few cities such as Evanston, Illinois, Asheville, North Carolina, and St. Paul, Minnesota are pursuing the idea. And during the presidential campaign, President Biden said he could support reparations if studies found direct payments to the descendants of enslaved people to be viable. Identifying who would pay for reparations would be considered at the same time. Janet Holtzblatt said this, who is a senior director at the Tax Policy Center. Another point would be the fact that the problems of reparations that there has been discrimination towards other races, not just African Americans. Native Americans, Asians, and African Americans all receive mistreatment that is unequal to white Americans. My sixth point would be finding ancestors would be extremely hard to find because slaves were viewed as property, not people. The Atlantic writes, "The problem of who qualifies is explosive enough with hiring and admissions preferences. As the benefits at stake expand to vast dimensions urged by codes, the question will become more explosive yet. Does a mixed person qualify? How mixed? What about recent immigrants from Africa or the West Indies? What about future immigrants? What about illegal immigrants from Africa? Would they suddenly gain legalization? Would amnesty come with no strings attached?" This was said by David Frum. CNN wrote, "It is estimated that the United States alone benefited from a total of 222,505,049 hours of forced labor between 1619 and the abolishment of slavery in 1865. Valued at the U.S. minimum wage with a modest rate of interest, that is worth $97 trillion today," which means that $97 trillion should be sent to the families who have African American slavery descent. ABC News writer Samara Lynn says that proposals for what reparations look like should vary. Many advocates are calling for direct payments, others are arguing for tax cuts, and some say that this should come in the form of putting the money into Black communities, scholarship funds, or other collective investments.